Hi, everybody. I'm Peter Jurgen. I'm the founder and CEO of Sage SEO, and we are a startup that is focused on helping other startups and small business owners tackle the problem of getting content ranked so you can generate inbound traffic to your websites. Obviously, you need an online presence established, but really you want that online presence to generate inbound leads for your business. We built the company and are building the company so we can help you tackle your content marketing strategy more effectively. For today, we're going to be talking about SEO fundamentals. And SEO is the key linchpin from our perspective when it comes to a great content marketing strategy. For us, when we first started looking at content marketing, our goal was to spend less and less on paid ads on Google search and Facebook ads and Google search ads, etc., but still generate the equivalent number of inbound visitors to our website. And so we started looking at SEO, and we understood that SEO was a key driving engine for our content marketing strategy. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So before I do that, by raise of hands, how many of you are paying for ads right now for your websites? Okay. All right. And then how many of you have blogs currently for your websites? So when we talk about content marketing in general, what we're talking about is this concept of using blog content primarily to generate inbound traffic to your website. So if you think about a classic example is a company like HubSpot. And what HubSpot does is they create a whole bunch of content around digital marketing, content marketing, and educational material that is high quality, that tells people about their business, but also tells people about tackling the general problem of content marketing and how they should approach content marketing. And by doing so, they end up getting their name out there as a company that helps people do content marketing. So from our perspective, we create a bunch of content around SEO and teaching people about SEO because in general, we're trying to find people that are trying to solve the problem of SEO and help them understand how SEO works and how it plays into the bigger picture of content marketing and digital marketing in general. So before we kick things off, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be covering today. The first thing is, how important is SEO to your business, and what does SEO mean to your content marketing strategy, and what are some of the things to keep in mind as you are thinking about your content marketing strategy and generating results from your content marketing. Then we'll go into basic SEO terminology. I'll go through some of the fundamentals of what SEO means and what the types of things you as a company and business owner should understand as you're thinking about your content marketing strategy. And then we'll talk about the three major types of SEO: on-page SEO, off-page SEO, and technical SEO, and what each of those means at a high level, and educate you a little bit so you can understand some of those fundamentals of each of those three major buckets of SEO. So when you're looking at SEO yourselves, you can more easily evaluate software solutions that are out there, consultants and marketing agencies that are out there potentially maybe trying to sell you on their marketing services, etc. And then after we finish going through the content, we'll take some time to do some live SEO audits and demonstrations and walk through what the SEO looks like for a couple of websites that Lily and Allison have been so kind to help provide us with. And I think maybe one or two of the folks that we're going to do the demos on are on the call already. And then we can just do general Q&A from there and step through it. And along the way, like Chris mentioned, if you've got any questions about SEO, feel free to throw them in the chat, and then Chris will kind of manage that chat and let me know when there are questions that pop up, either along the way that I can answer or towards the end, towards the Q&A session. So, sound good? All right. I promise SEO is much more exciting than listening to someone talk about SEO. But from my perspective, this is a really fun topic. And obviously, I wouldn't have made my business out of it if I didn't love it. So let's talk about Google searches. The way anyone finds anything mostly today is through Google. I think Google's current market share for search across the entire world is somewhere around 92%. So if you're thinking about, do I want to optimize my content for Google or Microsoft or Yahoo, God forbid, don't worry about anyone else but optimizing your content for Google, because the rest of them will sort of come along with it. So whether it's DuckDuckGo or Yahoo or Bing, if you're optimizing well for a Google search ranking, then you're going to end up optimizing well and do fine for those other search engines. But when you think about Google, one of the things that Google is trying to do is solve your problem as quickly as possible. And when they think about how do we solve your problem, they think about what are you typing into a Google search box? And then how do we present you with content that's going to answer your question as quickly as possible? Whether it's through the general organic search results, obviously, whether it's through them presenting ads at the top and the bottom of search results, or whether they're providing featured snippets or little e-commerce listings of products, et cetera, kind of depending on the search term and the type of search term it is that you're typing into the search box. It's really interesting to look at the statistics of general search when it comes to what people are searching and how often those searches result into clicks on a link that presents in the search results, and then also what types of items get clicked on in a search result. So here's a bunch of data from about 1 billion searches that was aggregated through a recent study. And of those 1 billion plus searches, 49% of them almost were zero-click searches. Can you guys see my mouse clicker? Hopefully, yeah, okay, great. So 49% of those 1 billion searches never even resulted in a click. So that means that whatever someone typed into that search result, Google was so good at presenting an answer to them that it answered their question without them having to dig further. These could be things like, what is Albert Einstein's birthday? Or what's the current unemployment rate in the US? Things like that Google can quickly pull up an answer to your question. And so right away, 49% of all searches, you're not gonna have access to, unless you get into things like featured snippets, which is out of the realm of this search or this discussion. But when you create content and Google thinks your content can easily answer a question, then sometimes they'll actually present your content, a paragraph from your content as people also ask this type of experience. And I'm sure we've all seen that in some of the search results. So of the remaining 51% of clicks out there, about 3.5% go to paid clicks to non-Google sites. And these are Google AdWords. So when you run Google Ads, about 3.5% of the time of someone searches for something in a search box, they're going to click on one of the ads that popped up there. That's still not a lot, as you can see, but that's still 4% of 1 billion, still a lot of searches. And since there's over, I think the numbers are around 6 billion searches a day, that's still a lot of clicks. Almost 6% of clicks go to Google websites. So YouTube would be a Google website, for example, or Google websites that are partner sites. So about 6%, and I think Google will highlight some of these a little bit in the search results, but generally they're not trying to get their own websites outranking other organic content, because that would kind of defeat the purpose of being a fair player in the world of internet search. And Google does not, despite wanting to sell ads, Google still wants to be considered someone who fairly presents search results for people that earn those organic clicks. And that takes us to the bottom left here, which is 41% of all clicks, or 41% of all searches result in an organic click to a non-Google site. And this is where you live. Yes, 58% of clicks don't result in an organic click, but still 41% of 5.7 billion searches a day result in a click on someone's top 10 search results in the organic rankings. You can very much bet that if your organic search gets clicked on, then you were in the first page of search results. And that is because 99% of searches are always on the first page. People might click to page 2 of search results or even page 3, but I love this graphic. Like if you're in page 4 through 7, you're pretty desperate. And then God help you, what are you still doing here if you're in page 8, 9, 10 in the search results, right? Nobody's going that far in unless they've just got they're like looking for pain for themselves. So 99% of clicks go on the first page, 32% of clicks go to the first search result, but still 71% of clicks are in the first 3 search results, and the remaining sort of 25, 26% are on the front page and in search results 4 through 10. And for each position you move up from 10 to 9 to 8, you increase your inbound traffic by 31%. So there's a lot to be said about, first, you want to get into the front page of Google search rankings, and then going from 9 to 8 and 7 to 4 really ups your organic traffic, because like I said, 71% of those clicks are going to those first 3 search results. And so your goal is to get into that top 3, but even if you're on the front page, you're doing very well. And then now you've got even better targets to create more content around, because Google has already decided that you are a competent content provider around that topic, which is great. Let's talk about some basics of search engines optimization before we get into a little bit more detail. So at its highest level, search engine optimization is the process of taking steps to help your website or a piece of content rank on Google. And those steps are sometimes may feel like a black box to you as a startup owner or a small business, but there are a number of steps that you need to make or take to make sure that your website's crawlable, that Google understands and knows about your website, and that they can index your content. And then once they can crawl it and they can index it, then they can rank it. And if you don't take care of those crawlable and indexable steps first, then they'll never rank your content, or they'll rank your content much slower, which you're trying to jumpstart that ranking process so you can get access to that inbound organic traffic more effectively. Once Google knows about you, they will use their web crawlers or spiders to go out and actually index your content. And so these are just pieces of software that go out and crawl every single web page on the internet that Google knows about and tries to glean what is the content about on that website. And they do this through a number of different manners that we'll talk about later on. But really, Google's trying to look at a website, quickly ascertain what the website is about, and then connect that website content to a search result or to a search request. And the better your content is at telling Google what your website's about, the more efficiently they can connect it to a search result or a search request, and then get you ranked. Domain authority is an important aspect in the sense that how relevant and how important and how reliable does Google think your website is in your area of expertise, and just generally when compared to other websites on the internet. Google has their own internal ranking system for determining domain authority for a website, but typically you'll see domain authorities ranging from a score of 0 up to 100, and the higher and closer you are to 100, the more reliable and higher your reputation Google thinks you have as a content provider. So if you look at a CNN.com or an ESPN.com, they might have a domain authority score in the upper 80s or low 90s, versus if you look at a website that's just started, they're going to be 0. But small businesses and startups will normally traverse from 0 to 3 to 5 to 10 to 20. Once you get your domain authority, I think above 20 or so, then Google already thinks that you're producing relevant content and that your content is indexable and worthwhile of being ranked, which is great. So everything that you're doing is trying to get your domain authority up so you can get ranked faster. The higher your domain authority is, the faster Google will rank new content. Whereas CNN might post an article and have that article ranked in search results within seconds, you might post an article and it might take you 3 months to get ranked because your domain authority is lower. And so the more consistently you can create content and the more consistently you can post that content and have it be high quality, the faster your domain authority will go up and the faster that content will rank. I'll pause there for a second. Chris, I know I covered a lot and sometimes I talk too fast. And so any thoughts on kind of what we've covered so far for the audience?
This is a good overview. The one thing about domain authority that I would say is that it's not a term necessarily that Google uses itself. It's been used by other companies that are trying to understand how Google works. And one of the things they've noticed is that the more reliable you are, the more reliable Google thinks you are. And they tend to point sites to universities and journalistic sites and companies that have been around for a long time and have an authority about a subject matter. So that's when I think about domain authority. We do have one question that came up in the chat, but I think you're going to cover it in your normal presentation. So we'll hold on that, Selma, until we get a little bit further along. And if Peter hasn't answered your question specifically, then we will deal with it then. So let's go ahead and push forward, I think.
So organic traffic, we've already talked about this. And if you already know what organic traffic is, that's great. If you don't, organic traffic is just something you'll see typically in your Google Analytics or whatever your favorite analytics tool is for monitoring traffic to your website. But organic traffic just means the number of visitors coming to your website from search engine results, clicks. So that means that someone searched for something in Google. Let's say they searched for bike tours in the Shenandoah River Valley, and you had an article about how to the best bike tours or the best locations, and then someone clicked on that. That's an organic hit or an organic search result. So organic traffic is just how many times someone has clicked on your website and then come to you by naturally a Google search, as opposed to a paid ad click, which is someone clicking on an ad that you ran in Google search result, for example. All right, keywords. So keywords are the way Google connects content to a search result. A keyword is not necessarily just one word, but a keyword can be one word, or a keyword can be an entire phrase. So content rankings could be a keyword, or pets could be a keyword. But the more words that you put into a search result box or a search query box in Google, the more likely it is you're going to get search results that are that are going to be able to solve your problem. So if you type in, like I said, bike tours in the Shenandoah River Valley, you'll probably get a bunch of websites that run bike tours in the Shenandoah River Valley. Or if you type in benefits of Pilates, you'll probably get a bunch of articles about the benefits of Pilates. Versus if you type in just Pilates, Google doesn't necessarily have enough information to just determine what problem you're trying to solve. And so the search results are going to be a little bit less on point with what you're trying to find on the internet. And so what ends up happening is typically people will type in more words into the search box, and that will still be considered a keyword. And ranking for keywords is what allows you to generate inbound organic traffic to your website. Backlinks, very basic, a link from one website to another. So if you are writing an article and you're quoting someone from another website that wrote an article about your content, that would be a backlink you're providing to someone else. Or if someone else is writing about a blog post that you wrote about in their webpage and they link back to your blog post, that's a backlink for you. Backlinks play a role in SEO in the sense that the more backlinks that you have from high domain authority websites and that have good text associated with the link, they call that anchor text, then the higher Google will rank your content, and because they realize that other people think your content is worth talking about in their webpage. Let's talk about search intent. So search intent is really Google's North Star. And so when Google thinks about how do I connect the best content to the searcher's query, they think about search intent. Is that query more of an informational query? Are they trying to learn about a topic or get advice around a subject? Is it more of a navigational query? Do they already know a website exists? So do they know POCME exists? So they're typing POCME. That would be a navigational query. Or they're typing in CNN.com, or they're typing in upmarket.com. That's a navigational query because maybe they don't know what your URL is, but they've heard about you. And a friend was talking to them about this great business that does XYZ. And so that's a navigational. A commercial query is searching with a focus around a product or service. So that could be someone who is searching for brown leather shoes or brown business shoes. That's more of a commercial query because it's likely someone is searching for that because they're trying to purchase some shoes. And then a transactional query is much more, I'm trying to actually buy something. So I've heard about these great socks that are made by this particular company. And so I'm typing in fantastic designer socks from blah, blah, blah. And that's a transactional query. And if you look at, this is a sales funnel that we're looking at right now. And so the higher up you are in the funnel, informational, then the longer it is before you're likely to make a purchase. But the lower you are in the funnel, your purchase intent is increasing. And so when you're creating content for your website, you want to be writing content that satisfies all of these queries. So you're bringing people in at various points of their search. The good thing about content marketing and what you're always trying to think about when it comes to content marketing is to establish trust with your users. And the more trust you can establish with people, the likelier it is that they'll come back and make a purchase or that they'll make a purchase that day. And you establish trust through content marketing by writing topics and articles about topics that are of interest to your prospective customers. So if they're trying to learn about something that you do, then maybe they're in the early stage of learning about it, or maybe they're coming back for the third time because they already found you through an informational query. And now they're more of a, hey, I'm ready to make a purchase of that bicycle tour, or I'm ready to make a purchase of your immigration services, for example. When you're writing content, you're going to be writing content that is going to be relevant to people at all of these levels. And the more you can do that, then the more content you'll have that gets ranked, and the more you'll be able to create a consistent pipeline of inbound traffic to your website that you can then convert into a sale. And that is the whole purpose of content marketing, is create content that gets ranked, that will generate inbound visitors to your website, that once they're there, you can convert into a purchase for your business.
Peter, before you move on, how many times does an average person interact with a brand before they make a purchase, if it's something they haven't seen before?
Thanks for asking that pointed and targeted question. The answer is 13 times as of today from a HubSpot survey most recently. So 13 times someone is going to look at your webpage or your content before they end up making a purchase. And so the more content you can have out there and the more ways you can have to get access to those customers, then the faster you're going to short circuit that buying process. So one of the things that your content marketing can be doing for you is generating email signups to your email list. So you can hook them with an article about a topic that's really interesting to them and say, hey, sign up for our email list. I noticed that Scroobius had an email list. I signed up for that today, for example, right? And the email list now gives Scroobius the ability to continue to send me content to my inbox that I probably will find relevant because I found them, in this case, we found them through Twitter, but in the case of your business, they could have found you through an organic search result. And now that search result has given you access to continue to sell them, but also continue to educate them on topics that are clearly relevant and interesting to them. And so that email sign up and that inbound organic traffic, that whole pipeline and that whole process of generating leads for your business, you're connecting them like glue and creating this stickiness to your brand that you can then use that information to sell them more effectively. All right. So let's talk about content strategy. In general, if you don't have content, you're not going to get organic traffic to your website. You may be able to put up landing pages about what you sell and what your business is about, but that's not going to be enough to generate inbound traffic to your website that's organic. Your landing page will suffice if you want to run a bunch of Google and Facebook ads. And if you're okay long-term paying for ads to generate inbound visitors, then maybe you don't need a content strategy. But to me, when you're thinking about your online presence, my general goal is to have a complementary strategy of ads with SEO. And the more effective you get at content creation and content marketing, the less money you have to spend on ads. And the less money you have to spend on ads, the more profitable your business is to the bottom. When I think about one of the good things about paid advertising, especially in Google search and Google AdWords, is when you run ads on the Google search side of things, you'll then see which keywords are resulting in higher conversion rates, more clicks per impression, as they say on the Google Ads analytics. And the ones and the keywords that are generating higher percentages of clicks, not only do those generate in more visitors to your website, but they also give you targets to then go write content about. So eventually you can move those clicks from a paid keyword click to an organic search result click. Which is even better because you didn't pay, for those of you who run Google Ads, you pay cost per click. So you don't pay anything for a Google ad until someone clicks on your ad. But as soon as someone clicks on your ad, you pay whatever the cost per click is for that keyword term. And cost per click can be 15 cents or it can be $30. Like if you try to run ads around SEO and small business SEO, those costs per clicks for those ads is typically $15 to $20 a click. And if you don't have that kind of budget, what's the better way to attack this? Well, it's to create content around small business SEO. And then you don't have to pay $15 a click. You get those clicks for free because you've created quality content that's relevant to that audience. So I think the next thing is publishing consistently and then tracking those metrics. So if you're going to publish consistently, and you can track the metrics on the Google Ads side, you also need to track the metrics on your Google Analytics. So if you don't have Google Analytics installed, I would highly recommend getting that installed because that is the basis of understanding the visitors that are coming to your website. And that allows you to gather that information, that data of what resulted in someone clicking on your website, and then do more of that and do less of the stuff that didn't result in a click. So, and then optimizing based on data is just about understanding your Google Analytics and your data that's in there that tells you about how did someone find you? Did they find you on a social media ad or a social media post? Did they find you from a Facebook ad or Google ad? Did they find you through an organic search? Did they find you some other way? And the attribution of how they found you and connected to your website, and then attribution of which clicks resulted in more conversions, more email signups, more product purchases, goal tracking of that kind of stuff. That's all important to your content strategy as well, and something you should be thinking about as you're planning out your content marketing strategy. So, okay, all right. So before we get into the 3 types of SEO, any questions so far that I can help answer? I saw a couple more pop in here. So
I was going to handle a couple of questions that came up. Could you back up one slide?
Sure.
One of the things that I think that is a little bit hard to kind of get your head around sometimes is what it means to identify your value and create quality content. And you talked about that a little bit, but could you maybe talk a little bit about how you go about identifying what it is that's valuable and then what it is that's quality? Because I think it ties back to that funnel that we talked about previously.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think about what's valuable, you want to put yourself in your customer's shoes. So what problem does your customer have that you can help them solve? And I know that you can help them solve it by your customer making a purchase of your product or your service, but potentially you can also help them solve that by educating them a little bit about that topic. So maybe there are some nuggets of information that you can put into a blog post that might help them understand and solve that problem. So if you look at what we do, right? Helping customers understand, how do you make your website crawlable? and what are those steps that you need to take to do that. That is something that allows us to write some content around SEO basics, and then we can use that information. And then as we write about SEO basics, we can turn that into a customer that might need help more deliberately with their SEO. If you think about HubSpot, like I said earlier on, they're writing content about why is content marketing important to my online website. And so they'll write some basics of why it's important in a blog post. So understanding the problem you're trying to solve, your customer's trying to solve, and how do you fit into that puzzle, and then work that backwards into writing some content about that. So, and then Sabrina, I see your question about publishing frequently, and I saw Chris has posted a response, which is for us, weekly is ideal. Bi-weekly is totally fine. We've seen good results with bi-weekly, but we see better results with weekly. Definitely not daily. Don't feel like you need to write a piece of content every day, because no one can do that. Nobody on the planet can do that. And the people that start doing that are either crazy content writers, or they're starting to use some of those artificial intelligence writers, which the quality will then generally go down. So AI writers have a place in the world, but you can assume that the more people that use AI writing, the more Google is going to try to figure out how to filter out that AI writing, because the quality of that content is not going to be as good, which will mean people are not as pleased with those search results. And if I'm looking at AI writing in general, I think Google is going to try in their algorithm to figure out how to identify some of those markers of what content is written solely by artificial intelligence versus what content is written by people, and try to bump up the search results of the content that is at least edited by people. So, and
then a question about Google AdMob, which is an SDK, I think, for ads. And we're not really focusing on SEM marketing so much today. We're kind of talking about it in contrast. But Peter, if you have any thoughts about Google AdMob, maybe now would be a good time to address them.
Yeah, so I think in general, when it comes to SDKs or software development kits and solutions that are out there, I'm not particularly familiar with Google AdMob, but we are looking at Google AdWords in general as a source to gather information. And as we build out our keyword research algorithms, bringing in data from third parties like Google Analytics and Google AdWords and Twitter trending information, that kind of stuff can be really valuable. But if you're not really focused on data and that's not your day job, ostensibly, if you're on this call, your day job is not SEO and your day job is not content writing. You're trying to sell your business and learn how to make your business more visible to the internet community. And so solutions out there that can help you, if you can consume them, if you're technical enough to consume them, I think it could be valuable. But don't get too wrapped around the axle of things like that to where it takes you away from that North Star. What is my user search intent for my target customers, and how do I create more content around that that's relevant? So I think if you can keep your focus on that, then anything you do around that will be valuable, and anything you do that takes your time away from that will have diminishing returns. All right, let's move on. Actually, Chris, do you want to answer that question?
So the question in the chat was about publishing frequency, and what does it count as, like, if you update or optimize content that was previously written? And the answer is it absolutely does count. When you take an article that was written a year ago or 18 months ago or 2 years ago and you refresh it and you put it up in a new URL, and tell Google, hey, I've got new content that's up, they will re-index it, and then they will look at it again for the value of its content and how it hits, and will totally count as new content. Obviously, you want to have a sufficient body of content over time. You don't want to just have the same 4 articles that you keep updating. But if you do have a deep bench of content that you've been writing over the course of a long period of time, it's a totally legitimate and valuable exercise to go back, see what content isn't performing, and then take that content and make it sexy for today's audience. Totally legitimate.
Yeah, I think if you repost content that you already posted before under a new URL, Google will think it's brand new content. And so if it was content if it's edited and updated, then what I would do is add a redirect from the old article to the new article. So any search results that were happening from the old article get forwarded, and that sort of link juice, as they say, goes to the new article. And so Google says, okay, the content and the search results I was sending to this article, I'm going to send it a new one. So because it's updated for 2022 instead of 2019 or whatever it was. Hopefully that answers your question. Let's talk about the 3 major types of SEO: on-page SEO, off-page SEO, and technical SEO. So on-page SEO, as the name implies, is anything you do to an individual piece of content to help it rank more effectively. And for search engines to understand what the content's about, be able to share the content, and just generally any structured information that you're putting about on-page SEO. So off-page SEO is any actions you're taking outside of your own website to impact your rankings. So those are actions like link building, trying to reach out to other websites and say, hey, I wrote this really cool piece of content. Would you link back to us? And then as you do link building, your domain authority goes up. So that's another aspect of off-page SEO. And then the last thing, and we'll dive into each of these three in more detail. So the last thing is technical SEO, and that is the fundamental optimization of your web page and your website for being crawled and indexed effectively by Google. So, okay, let's talk about on-page SEO in more detail. So search intent, we've already talked about quite a bit, but it is the idea of creating content that's relevant to your audience and understanding the types of problems your audience has, and then connecting your content strategy to their problems. Keyword research is the practice of now taking those topics and those ideas of search intent and turning it into actual keywords that you want to include into your content so that Google can rank your content for those keywords. And then structured data is this concept of headings and tags in your content that make it easier for Google to index it. So if you think about a blog post as think about it like a paper you wrote in college, right? And when you wrote a paper, if you wrote a long paper, you typically didn't just start writing. You would think about, what is this paper about? What are the major sections of this paper? And then what are the general notes for the content I want to put into each section? And it's basically an outline, right? And so when you're building out your web page, you want to create that outline because Google is doing the same thing. They're coming to a website or web page blind, and they're trying to ascertain what the content is about. And the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to look at the outline of that web page, and the outline is the equivalent of H tags. H1s, H2s, H3s, etc. And then your content underneath each H tag then tells Google that paragraph is about the H3 tag above it or the H2 tag above that. So when you talk about structured data, when you're writing content, you really want to be writing your content with good structure. So when Google comes, they can glean quickly, looking at those H tags, what your content is about, and then they can index the paragraphs and the individual sentences of your content to the corresponding header tag. And then that will let them do things like create featured snippets where it says people also search for. Google's looking for an H tag for that title of that content, and then they're looking for the paragraph that is associated with it. So, and then the last thing is on-page performance. If you've heard anything about Google's algorithm updates lately, they're basically prioritizing web pages that perform fast, because I'm sure all of us go to web pages, and if the web page hasn't loaded in 2 seconds, I leave, basically. And so there are a lot of web pages out there that don't load fast. And if your web page doesn't load fast, you're generally going to lose visitors pretty quickly. And the statistics are pretty alarming as far as drop-off rates of 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, 3 seconds. Like if your web page is taking 3 seconds, people have already moved on. So you want to optimize your website for performance, and that's a big piece of on-page SEO as well. So diving into this a little bit more detail. So for search intent, you want to evaluate your target's user intent and create content that addresses it. We've talked about this pretty ad nauseum. You want to perform keyword research to give you access to more monthly search visitors. Keyword research is identifying through the use of a keyword tool like Ahrefs or SEMrush, or other tools like Keywords Everywhere that are out there that tell you the types of keywords to include into your content to get that content to rank faster. And if you're not doing keyword research, then what ends up happening is you'll write a bunch of content that probably never gets ranked and never gets seen on the internet. And maybe some of you have experienced some of that, but that's why you want to do keyword research before you write your article. So you can then use those keywords that have good search volumes and low keyword difficulties to get ranked, make it the keywords that are easier to rank for, and then include those keywords into your content. And that will cause the content to rank faster. And I see Chris is putting something in there about the header tags. Thank you, Chris. So yeah, when you're in Microsoft Word or you're in Google Docs and you have the ability to change something to an H1 or H2 or an H3, that is what we're talking about when it comes to structured data. So the next thing that's important is, depending on what your website is, they're what they call meta tags. And some of this gets a little complicated, but the meta tags, if you're using, let's say, Squarespace or Wix or one of the website builders that are out there, they will help you by suggesting to you that you put in an SEO title or a meta title and an SEO description or a meta description. And what that means is basically, what does your content look like when someone types in a search result? If I were to do a quick example, what are meta tags? When you look at a Google search result, and this is a featured snippet example, I've been talking about featured snippets, so people also ask, like they'll give you this drop down and say, okay, search engines such as Google use metadata, blah, blah, blah. And they'll have a link to your website. In this case, Moz has this featured snippet, number one. But if you were to think about what does this look like, Moz actually has probably an H3 tag that says, what is a meta tag example? And then a paragraph underneath it with this text. And so that's why it's important to have an H3 and then the paragraph underneath it, because sometimes Google will just take that little block of text and put it at the top of a search result because they know it's going to answer someone's question. And that's why it's important to put header tags and H1s and H2s and H3s throughout your content, because you might get lucky and get ranked here. So a meta title and a meta description that I'm talking about here in section 3, the meta title is actually what your search result shows up as in a Google search result. So the meta title, for example, here is the ultimate guide to SEO meta tags, Moz. The meta description is actually this text. And so as we all know, as we're scrolling through these search results, we're looking at what's the title of this article? Does it ring true for the problem I'm trying to solve? And then I'll take a further dive and say, what is the description? Okay, that description is interesting to me. And then I'll click on it. So if you don't have these two, the meta title and the meta description in your blog article, then this might show up. Then Google typically will just generate this automatically for you. And maybe it's not going to be as on point as you want it to be. Or maybe they won't even have it at all. And then your search result probably won't even rank in the top 10, because you pretty much want to have those meta tags in there to get your content to rank. So the good thing about tools like Squarespace and Wix is they'll actually, in the blog post, give the ability to set those tags for you. But the reason you're setting those tags, the why behind setting those tags, is so your content shows up more effectively there. So the next thing is choose friendly URL names with real world. If I go back to the search result example, this article is, these are horrible terms. Okay, here's a good one. Why meta tags are so important. That's the URL for this link. So again, that's another way you as a person, as a human being, are looking at these search results and determining if this article is going to be relevant to you. And when you see why meta tags are so important and your search result was, what are meta tags? Then naturally you're probably thinking, well, now that I know what a meta tag is, well, why is it important? And you're probably going to click on this search result because it's got a good title. Versus these are like Ahrefs, blog, SEO-meta tags. Okay, that's okay, but that's not great. This is a much better title and URL for your article. So that's why picking URL friendly names is good. So is this valuable so far?
Guys, so far so good. Yeah, people are nodding their head. Okay.
Okay, good. Let's go to the next thing, which is off-page. So off-page SEO. The main components of off-page SEO, we talked about a little bit of this already, but domain authority, backlinks, anchor text, and social media. Domain authority, we dove into a little bit. So I'll go to the next page to talk about each of these in a little bit more detail. So domain authority is a result of all of your SEO efforts, and it's not an action. You can't take a specific step to increase your domain authority. You can't say, okay, I'm going to do this, and I know my domain authority is going to go up. Absolutely not. That would be great. If everyone could do that, then everybody would have a great domain authority. The way your domain authority goes up is it trickles up over time as you have a more effective content marketing strategy and as more and more people link back to your website content. And in order for someone to link back to your website content, you've got to have content that's relevant, and you've got to have content that's relevant in your market segment or your area of expertise. So domain authority is going to go up as you do more and more effective work around your SEO strategy. Some of that effective work is the idea of getting more backlinks. When I say not all backlinks are created the same, getting a backlink from your buddy who's got a WordPress blog that has no traffic is not, Google's not going to really care about that. Getting a backlink from fortune.com or rollingstone.com, Google's going to care a lot about that. So that's why you'll see people do what they call sponsored articles. So if you go to Forbes, for example, Forbes, you can pay $1,500 or $2,000 to write an article that gets posted under the Forbes.com domain name, if you've got that kind of budget. And the reason you would do that is because Forbes has a very high domain authority. And when Forbes backlinks to your website, this gives you a very strong backlink. That Google says, okay, well, Forbes is a high domain authority website and they're linking back to your website. Therefore, your website must have some good stuff in it. And so that backlink will be of good value. The next piece of this is the concept of anchor text. And anchor text works in conjunction with backlinks. Anchor text is just the text that's highlighted on a web page for the link. So let's say CNN wrote an article about your business and it was not paid. Like they just decided they thought your business was really cool and they wrote an article about you. If they said, please go check out Sage SEO, and they had www.sageseo.ai, the anchor text would be my actual URL. That's not great. What you want the anchor text to be would be like, if you're trying to learn more about the fundamentals of SEO, then there are several different options out there. And if fundamentals of SEO is what links back to sageseo.ai, that's the anchor text. And that's much better anchor text, because what Google is looking at that anchor text for is determining, is that anchor text a real world search phrase someone might type in? Someone might type in SEO fundamentals into a search box. And if I've got SEO fundamentals or fundamentals of SEO as the backlink text to my link, to my URL, that's much better than just the actual URL itself. So when you're looking to get more backlinks, the idea to get those backlinks is to try to get good anchor text for those backlinks from other websites. So the last piece of SEO, sort of those three major components of SEO, is technical SEO. These are those aspects of SEO that a lot of people don't know about, but that are absolutely critical to being crawled by Google and indexed by Google. There are three major components: robots.txt file, sitemaps, and web crawler tags. Let's talk about what each of these three things are. So robots.txt file is typically generated automatically by your content management system. So WordPress.com or Squarespace or Wix or any other major website hosting platform will generate what's called a robots.txt file. And generally, the robots.txt file is there and tells web crawlers like Google and DuckDuckGo and Bing and any of the like, you can look at my entire website and index it. The way people use robots.txt files to hide content from a search engine is by telling it, you can index all of our URLs, but everything under /documentation or everything under /support, whatever it happens to be. So if there's content on a web page that people want to not get indexed from Google, they'll add that as a no index in the robots.txt file. The way this works against you is sometimes accidentally you can have something in your robots.txt that tells those crawlers that they're not allowed to index your content. Most of the time, that's not an issue, but if you're not aware of it as a potential problem, then you don't know to go check it. Generally, though, the robots.txt file is wide open unless you've got a plugin or something that stops it. I'll give you an example. Even yesterday, so an SEO company, myself, I was looking at our HTML source code on the back end of our website and was trying to do just an SEO audit on our own website. And I got an error that said, your content has a no index, no follow tag, so we can't actually index it. And I was like, what? And so I went and looked in, and sure enough, on my homepage, there was a meta tag that says no index, no follow. And what does that mean? Well, it means that Google can't come and index my content, which is obviously the opposite of what I actually want to be happening. And the problem was that in WordPress, there was a setting that was set to make it harder for search engines to find you. And I have no idea how it got clicked. So maybe accidentally we clicked it, but that's the type of thing that if you don't know about that, then you might not know that you're telling search engines to stay away from you. And that's not what you want. You want search engines to find you. So sitemaps are the next piece that's critical. And a sitemap is basically just the file explorer of your website. So, or Windows File Explorer. So if you think about all the content that's on your website, then a sitemap is just a listing of every blog post that's on your website, every page that's on your website. And typically, again, sitemap files get generated automatically by WordPress and Squarespace and Wix. But if they're not getting generated, then you need to understand why and you need to fix that. Because the sitemap file will generally live at your root directory, and it's a key piece of the crawlability of your website. Because what ends up happening, and what most people don't do, is take that sitemap file and introduce it and submit it into a tool called Google Search Console. Google Search Console is the tool that tells Google you exist and to come index your content when you put new content up. And I would say 90% of the customers that we start working with, they have not taken their sitemap and submitted it into Google Search Console, which means you're relying upon Google to stumble upon you and find out about you on their own. which is not what you want to do. You want to tell Google, hey, I'm over here, I'm creating content, and I'll let you know when I create new content by updating this file. And I want you to come look at this file every 2 hours or every 4 hours. And so what ends up happening is now Google knows you exist. Now your sitemap file has been submitted into Google Search Console, and they can come and index you properly. So that is a key piece that most people forget or leave out. The last thing is the web crawler tags piece. So these are tags that, like schema.org and OpenGraph, don't worry about this, but basically what these are important for is when someone takes your website URL and they post it into Facebook or they post it into Twitter. You want that posting to look good. You want it to show an image that you want to show. You want it to show a nice brief description of what your content is about. And these tags are what tell Facebook and Twitter and Google what your content should be viewed or how it should be displayed in each of those tools. And if you don't have this stuff being generated automatically for you on Squarespace or Wix, for example, then maybe like WordPress doesn't generate this stuff automatically for you. You need a plugin or a tool to do this for you. So, and the better your content looks when it gets shared or reshared in social media, the more likely someone is to click on it. I'll stop, do some questions, and then we can do some demos of looking at some SEO for some of the websites that Lily submitted into me. So,
Peter, could you talk just a little bit about backlinks and anchor text again? Because there were a couple of questions about that. So when you have a media strategy, you've got some article out there and you're asking them to link back to you. The question was, is it important that you want to have not just your URL pasted at the back, but you want to have it done with anchor text? And how much does that matter, right? In the context of how important is it to focus on?
The most important top part of getting a backlink is the domain authority of the website backlinking to you. So if that's high, then you're doing great. If it's not high, then you want to try to find other targets that might have better domain authority than the one you're spending time trying to get. Getting backlinks is a manual process. So what typically happens is until you get to the point where you're producing content that people are just like, wow, this is amazing, they start writing about you, which for almost all of us, that's not the case. Then getting backlinks is a manual process. You find another website that is talking about the topic that maybe it's a website that does informational articles about immigration services, or maybe it's an informational or a website that does topics around software development, and they're not a software dev shop and you are. And so they've written technical debt or avoiding technical debt. But maybe the article they wrote about isn't great, or you've written a better article, or that article no longer works. And now you reach out to them and say, hey, I wrote this great article about technical debt. Do you want to would you link back to this article instead of the one you're currently running? And then now you get a good backlink from someone, and that's got higher domain authority. That's also a website that's relevant to your business. And so backlink building, as they call that, is a manual process of sending emails to website admins and saying, hey, I've got some great content that I think would be relevant to your audience. Would you post it on your website, or would you link back to it in this article that maybe you're not linking to yet? And then when you get them to link to it, it's better to have that high quality anchor text, because that's even sort of like a step up from Google's perspective.
Then the other question was, if we have time, can you talk about how you go through uploading your sitemap to Google Search Console?
Yes.
And I think that you can probably do that pretty quickly.
I can,
but
yes.
we are like with a half hour, and we do want to do the site analysis for those two sites.
We can, yeah, I can do this really quick though. So if you look at one of our customers is PS Code, Post.co. I love like advertising them because they do greeting cards online. And so you can send actual physical cards with a QR code to them. And the QR code is a gift certificate to DoorDash or Barnes & Noble or Best Buy or whatever, but it's also a physical card that lets people know you think about it. They do great designs. So anyway, PS Post has a sitemap file that gets updated every time they create new content. And so anytime, if you want to go to your website, like I could go to PocMe.com, for example, one of the websites, and probably type sitemap.xml and see your sitemap file. Yep, there it is. So this was probably generated, I'm guessing you're probably a WordPress site. Let's look real fast. Strikingly is your website CMS. Interesting. Okay. But Strikingly is generating this XML search sitemap.xml file, just like this file is getting generated for a PS Post. And then you can click into these, and then each of these is a more sitemap. So you can see this is a directory listing of all the content that's on their website. So if you take this file and you go to Google Search Console, this time to Search
I
Console.
recognize that Peter is working very quickly here. right? This is
Sorry.
recorded. You're going to have access to the recording. You can play it back at, 3/4 speed.
You can type Google Search Console into the search box and it'll get you to the link. And then you click Start Now. You might have to verify your domain. I've already verified my domain, so it takes me straight in here. But once you verify your domain or your URL that you own it, typically you can probably just log in with your Google account. And if that Google account has access to that domain already, then it'll be easy. If not, you might have to take a couple extra steps. And feel free to email us if you've got questions on getting this done, and we can walk you through it. So, because that's what we do. But once you're in here, to get your sitemap uploaded, you'll click on Sitemaps over here on the left-hand side, and then you'll actually just type it in. So, and then you'll hit submit. And then it submits it in. It says submitted successfully. Google will periodically process it and look for changes. You'll be notified if anything goes wrong in the future. We had an error, couldn't fetch. Obviously, we've got a problem that needs to be addressed. But if we were to look at one that's worked, this is what it would look like. It would say submitted, last read, success, how many URLs it discovered, and then give you some stats about those URLs. So, and now Google knows about it. They know when you last submitted it, and then they'll tell you when was the last time they looked at your content. And you can see they looked at it the 3rd and the 5th of April. So they're indexing PromptWorks website very, very regularly. So, and that's how you submit it. So
That answer your question? Yeah. All right. Excellent.
Melissa, I think this is your website, right? The SEMrush is a tool that SEO professionals use to do keyword research that we talked about a little bit, but also to monitor a website's performance when it comes to SEO. And so when you're trying to understand, and they have a free version of this, so you can do some basics using the SEMrush tool without signing up for I think their basic package is like $120 a month. So if you go down that path, that you can, we've obviously got a higher level package. But when you look at POCME, for example, your domain authority score is, Google doesn't tell you what the authority score is they have for you, but all these SEO tools will estimate it. So they estimate your domain authority scores of 13 out of 100. And then they'll also rank your website on a scale of 1 to, I think they go up to like 87 million or so. So you're ranked about 37 million in their rankings, and you're up 1.5 million in the last month. So congratulations. Then what they do is they're indexing content and they're seeing how many keywords do you rank for. So this says that they estimate that you're getting 0 search traffic a month. This number is usually low. You're probably actually getting some organic search results, which your Google Analytics would tell you if you've got it installed. And they've got you ranking for 6 keywords globally in the top 100 search results of Google. And we'll dive into what that means and what those keywords look like in a second. So, and then paid search traffic, if you were running ads and you had your ads connected into SEMrush, then they would also show you integrate your paid search traffic into this as well. So, and then referring domains and backlinks. We talked about backlinks before. A referring domain is just the listing of all website domains that backlink back to you. And so you could have multiple articles on, let's say, ESPN.com that point back to you, or lawyer.com that point back to you. And that would all count as one referring domain, but each of those individual articles would count as a separate backlink. So that's why this number is usually lower than this number. So you've got 23 domains that refer back to you and 51 backlinks.
Can I see what those domains are?
Yeah, so if I click on the referring domains, and you'll see some of these are junky and some of these are better. So, and let's sort these by domain authority score so you can see which ones are better. So crunchbase.com points back to you. So if I were to open that URL, actually no, it's pointing back to you. Yeah, it's pointing back to this page, so which is your popping page on Crunchbase. So Crunchbase gives you domain authority, even though you put your startup into Crunchbase, essentially, like I do for my startup, but it still counts as a referring domain back to you. And so that's the highest domain authority. So hopin.com travel guides points back to you. And if I were to open this up and look at which URL they're pointing back to, BizTech conference, is this a conference you participated in?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I can see PopMate here. Sometimes it's in the anchor text or it's somewhere else too. So what you'll find is some of these are junky. And so let's look at what this one is. So this looks like a company listing, pages that point back to you. So Google will probably discount things like this because the anchor text isn't there, right? This is probably just maybe it's a URL listing of your website. So if I pop into here and look, let's see if I see PopMate. Hey, there you are. So you show up there on whatever this page is. International job market web application, headquartered in New York, seed, industry. To be honest with you, what they're doing is probably they're going to Crunchbase and pulling this stuff directly programmatically from Crunchbase and then populating this page of listed startups. So I would bet that if I were to look at that subscription, yep, you're about, right?
So when you go into Google and somebody types in a company name, often you'll see those kinds of, here's about that company, the phone number of that company, or who's the owner of that company. And
Right.
there are sites that are trying to get those clicks, and I bet there are ads on that page, and that's why it's
Yes.
not there.
I just Google POCME, you show up number 1 here, your LinkedIn shows up number 2, and so there's your Crunchbase page number 4 or so, right? So yeah, so that's what that anchor text is for that one. And then this is the fun thing of kind of going through some of this stuff. Like if you find something that, are there any of these that jump out at you as places where you think an article was written about you or they referenced your business as I scroll down slowly?
Maybe Ciscar or Emerge.
New York graduates. This is an accelerator that you went through?
Yeah.
Okay, there you are, POCME, connecting companies with international talent. So your anchor text here is POCME, right? Versus it might have been more fun for your anchor text to be connecting companies with international talent. That would have been
Right.
better anchor text. So, and startup accelerators do this all the time, right? They'll anchor text back to the actual URL on your name, which is, I understand why they do that, but it'd be much better if they anchor texted back to what you do. So yeah.
So maybe
so-
dig into the 6 keywords that she has that is ranked for, and then we need to go to the other site so that we still have time to do that.
So if I look into your keywords that you rank for in the top 100 search results: Human Invest, Homeward Bound, Moving Solutions and Logistics, the Human Element Podcast, How to Be Human Podcast. And so you can see you rank 69th for that. You rank 16th for Human Invest, and the URL that ranks is Invest Human, the human capital shift. So you can see, again, that's an article or that's a landing page, I guess, for you guys, right? So,
Right.
and you don't really have a blog, right? From what I can tell.
Now, yeah, it needs updating.
Okay, so the more keywords that you rank for. So if I were to like just Google Human Invest, let's see if you talk to me. So not on the front page. Let's see this. They estimate you'll be on the second page. Let's see. Nope.
We used to be on the front page when it was in.
Yeah, here you are. You're on page 3 right now. So Invest Human Podcast, number 22 or so, right? So, but this is telling you the keywords that you are starting to rank for, and then giving you some ideas for content to write about to get more of these keywords ranked for it. So, and that's
Peter,
how we, yeah.
Sorry, it might be useful to, we're very familiar with what those headers are across that column there. Position, difficulty, traffic, volume,
Right.
Keyword difficulty. It might be good to just do a quick overview. So when people go in to look at this, because there's a lot, and then we need to move on to the second website.
Yeah, thanks. So intent is that search intent sales funnel that I showed you, right? Informational intent, transactional intent. You don't rank for any keywords that are commercial or navigational intent, but that's what they're showing you here in this column. This search features, this is where like a featured snippet would show up and let you know that you have a featured snippet for one of those things. So knowledge panel, image pack, reviews, etc. The position we talked about, that's your top, that's where you rank in the top 100 search results of Google for this keyword. So if you type this into a search box, you should pop up around here. These change constantly, as you might imagine. Keyword difficulty, position difference is if it's been going up or down. Traffic is how much traffic they estimate you're getting based on your ranking, and the search volume. So search volume, as we said, 70% of the search traffic is going to come to the top 3 search results. So you're not getting any traffic estimated because you're not in the top 3 for any of these. But if you were in the top 3 and this was 140 search term a month, then maybe you would be getting, let's say, 20 to 40 hits a month from just that term. And then keyword difficulty is on a scale of 0 to 100. How hard is it to rank for that term in Google search results estimated by SEMrush? So, and then here's the cost per click. So if you were to run Google ads, they estimate that if you run Google ads for the term human invest, it would cost you $8.60 every time someone clicked on your page.
Why don't we, just to make use of the time for the people who are here, can we give Salma a shot and do the Woman Eats site?
Sure.
Oh, sure.
So what's your URL? All right. So let's take a look. So you are are much farther down your SEO journey, as you can tell from the numbers. Your domain authority is 26. I usually tell anyone if your domain authority is 20 or above, you're already doing something well, and Google already thinks that you are creating content and your content's worthwhile, it's sort of that threshold that I've seen that once you hit it, then your content will get indexed on a more periodic and regular basis. So they estimate your organic, your website ranking is 3.8 million. Roughly, and organic traffic they estimate 193. Again, their estimates are usually low, so I guess if you're looking at your Google Analytics, it's probably a little bit higher than this. You rank for 286 keywords in the top 100, 84 referring domains, 323 backlinks. And I think for you, rather than looking at the referring domains and backlinks, it's probably more important and interesting to look at your keywords you ranked for. So because you are ranking for keywords that are generating traffic. And so if you look at this number here, this number is globally ranking, and so that's what this table is. So you rank for 286 keywords worldwide, 212 in the US. When you dig in, they only let you dig in by country. So when I click in, that's why it does 212 for the US here. So which is probably what you hear about mostly anyway. So 212 keywords ranked in the top 100. They estimate 105 traffic. To give you an estimated traffic cost, this number is the equivalent of if you were to spend money on Google to get the equivalent amount of organic traffic you're getting today, they think you would have to spend about $52 a month to get that, to generate that traffic. So you're generating $52 worth of free traffic to your website right now is what that number means. So, and then if we look at this by search position, Womanese, you rank number 1, obviously for Womanese, which is great. Best fabric for night sweats, you're number 1. Again, that's searched 140 times. And they estimate you're getting about 34 hits a month from that. That's probably a little bit higher, but that's great. Best fabrics for menopause, for hot flashes, cotton wool feeling in your head. So these are the terms that you rank in that, as you can see, as it goes down, you're ranking for these are the ones in the top 10 that are probably actually generating traffic to your website. As you get to page 2, which is 13 through 20, these are likely not, but they're also potentially good topics for you to write more content about or to expand on the content you've already written. So Valerian root for hot flashes, you're 19. So you're probably not generating traffic, but look, that's got a keyword difficulty of 53. And if I were to open the article, that you've clearly written a blog post about 8 natural herbs for dealing with hot flashes, and valerian root is one of those. You could then take that article and then try to write a little bit more about the valerian root aspect of it by editing that article and expanding that section of it to then get this from 19th up to 5th or 4th, etc. So this is where those keywords that you rank for start to give you ideas of where to expand your content or to write more content, because Google now thinks, hey, Womanese.com is a website that reliably talks about valerian root for hot flashes or fabrics for menopause or fabrics for night sweats. And people find that content interesting and keep coming back. And so we'll rank you. And so you've already crossed a big chasm of being ranked for these terms. And now this gives you an idea for writing more content about it. So eating everything in moderation. Can sugar make hot flashes worse? Valerian for menopause. What does eat in moderation mean? So, and the other fun thing, so this tells you kind of what you're ranking for in page 2, page 3, page 4, because this now gives you targets to write more content about. And as you write more content about, you'll have more access to this US search volume. And I did not actually get to this for some reason, but this is the column that tells you how many times a month this keyword is searched in the US on average. So on average, someone is searching for Womanese 70 times a month in the US. They're searching for best fabric for night sweats 140 times. And if I sort by this, you can see that you rank, like there's some very high search terms like best menopause supplements that you rank for, but you don't rank high enough to be generating any traffic. But you can see this has a commercial intent, right? If someone is searching for best menopause supplements, they're probably likely looking for something to buy. They're looking for menopause supplements to buy. And so that's why SEMrush calls this a commercial search intent term, which means that, hey, you want to rank for this term because it's very likely that that page potentially could convert at a higher rate than some of your other pages that are more informational. So I look at this page, look, you're getting affiliate links and dollars, I would assume, by writing this article content. And so the more people that can come to this page and then click on this and then go buy that, I don't know what the affiliate pricing is, but you make more money by sending more people to that page and them buying that product. And so now you know, okay, now this page of 8 best menopause supplements is ranking in page 56. Now, how do I make that page? So if I look at this, now I say, okay, well, I can optimize the keywords that are in each of these blurbs about each of these topics, calcium, vitamin D, magnesium, or I can write a longer intro into this potentially and say, hey, this is why menopause supplements are important and the value of it. And then write a quality piece of, could be 250 to 500 words that has good keywords in it. And then you add keywords about calcium as a supplement for menopause. And all of a sudden this starts shooting up from 56 to 20 to 10 to 5. And now you're getting maybe 1,000 hits a month on that. Now your affiliate links are generating some cash for you, right? So searching, seeing the content that you're already ranking for gives you a good idea of what Google thinks your website has good potential for. Natural remedy for hot flashes, 509 times searched a month. You're 59, so you can write some more content about that. So, but you can see if you didn't do the keyword research, you would never know that you ranked these terms at all. And now you say, okay, now I've done the keyword research. Now I've got some potential targets for me to write some more content about to really spruce up those affiliate links and get some actual, turn these pages into money makers. So.
Yeah, and you can also see that because we used to publish once a week. And from November onwards, it's really, really slowed down because we were focusing on something else, and you can see the effect.
Yeah, if I look at your keyword rankings, I always say that the content that you're posting is for your SEO results in 30 days to 60 days. And as you can see, like you said, you were posting consistently and your keywords were going up. I don't know how much keyword research you were doing into it, but you were up to 591 keywords ranked for in November. And now you're down to 286 because, like you said, you probably started posting as consistently. But if I were to look at your rankings back in November and see what keywords you ranked for really fast, because I know we're running low on time.
I was just going to call you on that.
You were ranking, what does moderation mean? Best menopause supplements, you were at 55 there. Flash shots. So, but you're ranking for a lot more terms and probably a lot more terms in the top 10 too as well. See how many more you're in the top 10. So yeah.
Okay.